So how well equipped are our young people for the future of work? Robot automation will take 800 million jobs by 2030. That was a headline from a recent study from the McKinsey Global Institute. But if robots taking our jobs sounds a bit far down the road for you, there are also significant obstacles in the here and now. Because a new report released today by Youth Action, the Uniting Church and Mission Australia, has identified key barriers for young people trying to even obtain vocational training. This is what it found. More than 90% of the 1 million jobs expected to be created by 2020 will require qualification beyond high school. Young people are taking an average 4.7 years to find full-time work after they finish their studies, and 2.3 years to find any work at all. As it so happens, the CEO of Youth Action is here with me, right here. Katie?
Here I am.
These are really alarming statistics. Can you tell what can be done about it?
I think the report was really interesting working with Mission Australia and Uniting, because we were hearing from young people who would traditionally be looking to vocational education and training as an alternate way to get some more training, to get their foot in the door, to get a job. We've seen those numbers decrease, and the question was why. And what we found is that many young people who are from disadvantaged backgrounds were having a lot of trouble actually navigating the system. So there's a lot of government attention going into let's create skills, let's create more jobs and get more people in, but actually what's happening is that the systems that they've created are too complex. Their upfront fees are beyond a young person's reach. The information that's out there isn't really clear. Young people don't know where to start, where to go and how to get through. And then the supports that are necessary, particularly for Aboriginal students or students with a disability, mental health issues or experiencing homelessness, those supports aren't there anymore. So what we need to do is work with the vocational education sector that we've got right now, beef it up a little bit and make sure that those young people who traditionally are looking to get out of poverty through going through the vet system actually can get their foot in the door and complete their actual courses. And at the moment, we're not seeing enough young people doing that. And those million jobs that are being created, as we were talking before, we don't have enough young people who are getting the skills that are going to be able to get those jobs. So we might see an increase for jobs for people my age and above, but we're not going to see it for the young people who we really need to get into jobs quickly, and particularly from these disadvantaged young people. The sooner they get into jobs, the better their lifelong outcomes are going to be.
And what kind of insights do you have into the other kinds of disadvantage? I mean, this took some measurement of the different disadvantage: literacy and numeracy, homelessness, mental health.
Yeah.
94% coming from an environment of domestic or family violence.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of complexities going on for young people in Australia today, and sometimes I think we brush over it, we don't talk about it. There's a lot of generalisation that happens for young people now that is, I would argue, is probably not true for what the reality is. Young people really want jobs. They want to get their own foot in the door of their first job, and they want to be able to move on in their careers. But at the moment, there are all of these barriers that are in place. And what we have is, if we don't start addressing these issues as these jobs are created, young people aren't going to be able to get into those jobs. They won't have the skills for it, and we'll see youth unemployment get even bigger than we have now. And as we were talking about before, it's already double that of the general population. In some areas, it's 4 times the number of the general population. And so it's concerning, I think.
Now, this is something you've been concerned about as well, Jennifer. Do you think this kind of accessibility and streamlining information will go some way to dealing with some of the structural issues?
But the whole vet sector over many years in Australia has been the poor relation of education in Australia. Partly it's because it's so largely funded by a variety of state governments. Partly it's because everybody decided, or not everyone, an awful lot of people decided that, university was the answer. Also, companies don't have the same type of apprenticeships that they used to have. But, we had state governments who used to have control of the vet sector. Then it was opened up to the private sector, but there was still a large pool of federal money. Obviously, there were lots of rorts that went on there. We're all kind of coping with the byproduct of that, really. But now, as though everybody keeps on saying training is important, you go to most of the vet sectors in any state in Australia, and they're pretty poor results, either private and in public. Some of them are obviously good, but a lot of them are not, and most students wouldn't have a clue. So I think we really do let down, despite the money that's spent. we just don't apply it properly at all. And anyway, there's a whole lot of reasons for that, about social issues as well for that. But I think it's actually just a plain basic failure of teaching and knowing what to teach adequately, and also keeping in touch with what employers want.
I thoroughly
Trish,
agree
yes.
yes, I absolutely agree with Jennifer completely with everything that she said there. The TAFE system has been the poor relation. It's no good, and some rorts. Not all that long ago, just terrible, and courses that weren't needed or people still weren't going to get jobs out of. But going back a step to those young people who haven't got jobs and finding it difficult to navigate the system, where there's been, unhappy and dysfunctional home life, maybe not stable accommodation, those things have to be fixed first, because they're never going to get anywhere until that can happen. And but that won't be for all young people looking for qualifications and work, but it will certainly be for those that are in the really underprivileged situation, whether it's mental health or stable housing. And this has sort of been well known for a long time, so we can't lose sight of that either.
What we found is also that actually that young people young people who are experiencing homelessness were still looking to continue, because they very much valued the idea of getting that certificate at the end, getting that diploma, and they were willing to work. The thing that you need is supports to make sure that they can maintain that they can actually get through their course while they're experiencing more difficulties, I suppose, or those periods of crisis. We want to keep them in those courses to get them to the completion, because those millions of jobs are going to need those certificates. They're going to need secondary education, and we're not having enough young people using the VET system. The VET system needs a bit of a tweak, I would argue, that there's some really...
More than a tweak.
Well, yeah, I mean, I like to... Let's be positive, but... Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually really possible to work with what we've got. And in New South Wales, for example, the government is really focusing on trying to get young people through. We just have a miscommunication about how to get the right young people into those places. And I think a lot of Australians don't realise that TAFE and private providers it's really quite expensive. You only get vet fee help if you get a diploma. So all those certificates, all those entry-level things actually are upfront costs. And so a young person has to find $2,000-3,000 upfront, even just to get their foot in the door. And we need to look at that. I don't think that's the best way to do it.
I had a look at your report today, and I think you should be congratulated. There's a bunch of big political problems here, but you've identified something really important, which is just social service delivery, right? You've got often troubled kids trying to navigate a bureaucracy, and they find it difficult. And this resonates a lot with the research we've seen in the US. Very, very small amounts of the bureaucracy can deter a kid from getting through. So there's, turns out in America, if you take the SAT, sort of like the HSC, and you want it to use it to apply to a uni, you have to pay $7 to get it sent to the university. When they reduced that fee, the number of kids who applied to university went up enormously. Wow. So there can be big problems in the system, but really small things, getting the service delivery right, can have massive effects.
Absolutely.